At 10:47 this morning, Judge Tanya Chutkan sat at her bench in courtroom number 4 of the Federal District Courthouse in Washington, D.C., looked directly at Donald Trump, and spoke the words that will define the rest of his life. Quote, Mr. Trump, you have been convicted by a jury of your peers of conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. These are among the most serious crimes a citizen can commit against the democratic process. The harm you caused to this nation, to the rule of law, and to the peaceful transfer of power is incalculable. After considering the sentencing guidelines, the arguments of counsel, and the nature of your conduct, I am imposing the maximum sentence allowed by law. On count 1, 5 years. On count 2, 20 years. On count 3, 10 years. These sentences will run consecutively. The total sentence is 35 years in federal prison. There is no possibility of parole under federal law. You will serve your sentence in a federal correctional facility to be determined by the Bureau of Prisons. You are remanded to custody immediately. At 10:52 a.m., 5 minutes after the judge finished speaking, U.S. Marshals approached Trump at the defense table, placed handcuffs on his wrists, and led him out of the courtroom through a side door. He did not speak. He did not resist. And at 11:03 a.m., he was processed at the courthouse detention facility, fingerprinted again, issued federal inmate identification number 4738254, and placed in a holding cell pending transport to a federal prison. Subscribe to this channel immediately, because what I am about to walk you through is not just a sentencing. This is the maximum penalty a federal judge could impose. This is a 78-year-old man receiving a sentence that, given his age, amounts to life in prison. And this is the moment a former president of the United States became federal prisoner, 4738254. Here is what happened during the 2-hour sentencing hearing that led to this decision. Because the arguments made by both sides reveal why the judge chose the maximum sentence. The hearing began at 9:00 a.m. The courtroom was packed. Spectators had lined up outside beginning at 4:00 a.m. to secure one of the 50 public seats. Media filled the overflow room, and every major network was broadcasting live. At 9:03 a.m., the lead prosecutor stood and presented the government's sentencing recommendation. He spoke for 37 minutes. He began by describing the nature of the crimes. Quote, Your Honor, the defendant attempted to overturn a presidential election. He pressured state officials to change vote counts. He pressured his own vice president to refuse to certify electoral votes. And when those efforts failed, he summoned a mob to the Capitol and directed them to stop the certification by force. 5 people died as a result of the violence. On January 6th, hundreds of police officers were injured. The Capitol was breached for the first time since 1814, and the peaceful transfer of power, a tradition that has defined American democracy for over 2 centuries, was interrupted. The defendant has shown no remorse. He has not acknowledged wrongdoing. He has not apologized to the country. Instead, he has attacked the judicial process, threatened witnesses, and claimed he is the victim. Given the severity of the offense, the need for deterrence, and the defendant's complete lack of contrition, the government recommends a sentence of 20 years. The prosecutor sat down. At 9:47 a.m., Trump's attorney, John Luro, stood to present the defense's argument. He spoke for 29 minutes. Quote, Your Honor, my client is a 78-year-old man with no prior criminal record. He has devoted his life to public service, first as a businessman creating jobs, and then as President of the United States. He genuinely believed the 2020 election was compromised. He was acting on that belief. He was exercising his First Amendment rights to challenge the results. He did not intend to obstruct anything. He intended to ensure election integrity, imposing a lengthy prison sentence on a man of his age would be cruel and unusual. It would be a death sentence. The defense respectfully requests that the court impose a sentence of time served with supervised release and community service. Lauro sat down. At 10:17 a.m., Trump himself stood to make a statement. Under federal law, defendants have the right to address the court before sentencing, a process called allocution. Trump spoke for 11 minutes. He did not apologize. He did not express remorse. Instead, he attacked the process. Quote, "Your Honor, I should not be here. I did nothing wrong. I was exercising my rights as a citizen to challenge an election I believed was stolen. The jury was biased, the prosecutors were corrupt, and this entire trial was a witch hunt designed to prevent me from running for president again. I am innocent. History will vindicate me. And the American people know the truth." Trump sat down. Hit that like button right now if you understand what just happened. The judge heard the prosecution ask for 20 years. The judge heard the defense ask for time served. The judge heard Trump refuse to take responsibility. And the judge imposed 35 years, the absolute maximum allowed by law. The algorithm decides what breaks through. You decide whether this analysis reaches people who need to see it. Because what I am showing you is a federal judge rejecting every argument the defense made and imposing a sentence that ensures Trump will spend the rest of his life in prison. At 10:52 a.m., as marshals handcuffed Trump, his face showed no expression. Reporters in the courtroom described him as looking straight ahead, saying nothing. His attorneys sat motionless, and spectators in the gallery, some of whom had supported Trump and some of whom had opposed him, sat in stunned silence as the reality of what had just happened became clear. At 11:15 a.m., Trump's legal team filed a notice of appeal. The notice states that the defense will appeal both the conviction and the sentence, arguing that the trial was fundamentally unfair and that the sentence is grossly disproportionate to the offense. Drop a comment right now. Tell me if you think 35 years is appropriate or excessive. I am reading every response because this question is dividing the country. At 11:34 a.m., Special Counsel Jack Smith held a brief press conference outside the courthouse. Quote, "Justice has been served. A jury convicted Donald Trump. A judge has sentenced him. The rule of law has been upheld. No one, regardless of their position or their power, is above the law. This case is about accountability, and today there has been accountability." Smith took no questions and left the podium. At 12:03 p.m., the White House released a statement. Quote, "The President respects the independence of the judicial process. He has no comment on the sentence." At 12:47 p.m., reactions began pouring in from across the political spectrum. Senator Mitt Romney issued a statement. Quote, "The sentence is severe, but the crimes were severe. Trump attempted to overthrow an election. The judge's decision reflects the seriousness of that attempt." Senator Lindsey Graham issued a statement. Quote, "This is an outrage. 35 years for a 78-year-old man is a death sentence. This is not justice. This is political persecution." Former Vice President Mike Pence issued a statement. Quote, "I testified truthfully about what happened. The jury reached a verdict. The judge has imposed a sentence. I respect the process, and I pray for everyone involved. Share this video right now, because what I am about to explain is what 35 years in federal prison means in practical terms. Federal sentences do not have parole. Trump will not be eligible for early release based on good behavior in the way that state prisoners can be. Under federal law, prisoners can earn a maximum of 54 days of good time credit per year, which can reduce their sentence by up to 15%. That means Trump's 35-year sentence could be reduced to approximately 30 years if he earns maximum good time credit. Given that Trump is 78 years old, a 30-year sentence means he will be 108 years old when released. Statistically, that is beyond average life expectancy. The judge effectively sentenced Trump to die in prison. Trump will be housed in a federal correctional institution. The Bureau of Prisons will determine which facility based on his age, his health, his security classification, and bed space availability. It is likely he will be sent to a low or medium security facility, given that he is not considered a violent offender. He will be assigned a cell, given prison clothing, and placed on the regular schedule of the facility. He will have limited contact with the outside world. He can receive visits, make phone calls, and send and receive mail, but all are subject to monitoring and restrictions. At 1:15 p.m., legal experts began analyzing whether the sentence will be upheld on appeal. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe stated, quote, "The sentence is within the statutory maximum. The judge followed the sentencing guidelines. The judge articulated clear reasons for the sentence. Unless the appellate court finds that the trial itself was fundamentally flawed, they are unlikely to reduce the sentence. Sentencing decisions are given great difference." Former federal prosecutor Pitt Barrara stated, quote, 35 years is harsh, but these were extraordinarily serious crimes. Trump tried to stay in power by overturning an election. He mobilized a mob that attacked the Capitol, and he showed zero remorse at sentencing. Judges consider remorse. Trump showed none. The judge responded accordingly. At 2:00 p.m., Trump was transported from the courthouse detention facility to a holding facility operated by the U.S. Marshal Service. He will remain there while the Bureau of Prisons determines his permanent placement. That determination could take days or weeks. During that time, he is in federal custody with no possibility of release pending appeal. Here is what we are watching for over the next weeks and months. 6 indicators that will tell us how this sentence plays out. Indicator 1. Does the appellate court grant bail pending appeal? Trump's lawyers will argue that he should be released while his appeal is pending. But given the severity of the sentence and the nature of the crimes, bail pending appeal is unlikely. Indicator 2. Which federal prison does the Bureau of Prisons select? If he is sent to a facility close to family, it suggests they are considering his age and health. If he is sent to a remote facility, it suggests security concerns are the priority. Indicator 3. Does Trump's health deteriorate in custody? At 78, with the stress of incarceration, health issues are possible. If he requires medical care, it could affect where he is housed. Indicator 4. How does the appeal proceed? If his lawyers identify strong legal errors in the trial, the appellate court may order a new trial or reduce the sentence. If they do not, the sentence stands. Indicator 5. Does Trump continue to claim innocence, or does he eventually acknowledge wrongdoing? If he were to express remorse, he could potentially seek a sentence reduction, though that is unlikely. Indicator 6. How does the public react over time? If polling shows the sentence is viewed as excessive, it could create political pressure for clemency. Though under federal law, only the president can grant clemency, and the current president has made clear he will not intervene. Here are 3 scenarios for how this plays out. Scenario 1. The sentence is upheld, and Trump dies in prison. The appellate court affirms the conviction and the sentence. Trump serves years in custody. His health declines. He dies in a federal prison at age 85 or 90. He never sees freedom again. This is the finality scenario. Scenario 2. The sentence is reduced on appeal. The appellate court finds errors in the trial or determines the sentence is excessive. The sentence is reduced to 15 or 20 years. Trump serves a decade and is released in his late 80s. He too lives his final years outside prison. This is the reduction scenario. Scenario 3. Trump receives clemency. A future president, either from political pressure or personal belief, grants clemency and commutes Trump's sentence. He is released after serving 5 or 10 years. He does not serve the full 35 years. This is the clemency scenario, though it is controversial and politically risky. Subscribe right now. Like this video. Comment with your prediction. Which scenario happens? I am tracking all three. And as the appeal proceeds, and as Trump's incarceration continues, you will see the analysis here. Let me show you why this sentence is historic. No former president has ever been sentenced to federal prison. Richard Nixon was pardoned by Gerald Ford before he could be charged. Other presidents who faced legal scrutiny left office and were never prosecuted. Trump is the first to be convicted, and now he is the first to be sentenced to decades in prison. The judge's decision to impose the maximum sentence sends a clear message. Attempting to overthrow an election, obstructing the peaceful transfer of power, and showing no remorse results in the harshest penalty available. This sentence establishes a precedent. Future presidents will know that if they attempt what Trump attempted, they will face not just political consequences, but criminal consequences that can end their freedom for the rest of their lives. What I know for certain right now, at 10:47 a.m. today, Judge Tanya Chutkin sentenced Donald Trump to 35 years in federal prison. The sentence is the maximum allowed by law. It is consecutive, meaning the sentences for each count run one after the other, not at the same time. Trump is 78 years old. A 35-year sentence, even with good time credit, reducing it to 30 years, means he will be over 100 years old if he lives to see release. The judge called the crimes among the most serious a citizen can commit. She said the harm to the nation is incalculable. She rejected the defense's plea for leniency, and she imposed a sentence that ensures Trump will spend the remainder of his life in custody. At 10:52 a.m., Trump was handcuffed and led out of the courtroom. At 11:03 a.m., he was processed as federal inmate 4738204. At Saturday, he was transported to a Marshals holding facility. He is now in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. His attorneys have filed an appeal. That appeal will take months or years to resolve, and unless it is successful, Donald Trump will never be a free man again. The sentence was announced in a courtroom packed with observers who had waited hours for a seat. The reaction was immediate. Some spectators quietly wept, others sat in stunned silence. The defense table was motionless, except for one attorney who put his head in his hands. The prosecution table remained professionally composed, but the weight of the moment was visible on every face. Outside the courthouse, crowds had gathered. Some chanted in support of the sentence, others chanted against it. Police maintained order, but the tension was palpable. This is not just a legal outcome. This is a moment that will be studied by historians, debated by legal scholars, and remembered by every American who lived through it. A former president convicted by a jury, sentenced to die in prison by a federal judge. The system worked. The rule of law held, and accountability was enforced. Stay with this channel. Turn on notifications. As the appeal is heard, as the Bureau of Prisons announces his facility placement, as his incarceration continues, you will see the analysis here. This is the sentence. This is 35 years, and this is the moment a former president became a federal prisoner for the rest of his